What's going on, y'all? Thanks for checking in the Khaliis Take. As always, you know what to do, though. Like, subscribe if you haven't already. Also, hit that notification bell just so you get the newest and the bonus content first. But hey, let's just go ahead and jump right into the topic for today. So, when I think about Kawhi and PG, those are two players right now in LA that a lot of people look at as two wing players that can win a championship for the LA Clippers if they're healthy. Now, health has been a big issue for this team. It's been a big issue for this team going forward, and going forward it will be, I should say, because they're definitely having more health issues seem like, or more health problems seem like than any other team in the NBA to me. But the question I have is it out of the realm, or is it unrealistic to say that the Clippers might shut down both Paul George and Kawhi this season? Now, Paul George is expected to come back quicker because of his injury is not as severe, or at least some people think it's not as severe as Kawhi Leonard's, but it's very, very questionable whether it is or it isn't, for the simple fact that the UCL injury that he has really, really is a very rare injury, as I said a few videos ago. And it's just something rare in regards to most basketball players don't ever seem to find themselves getting this injury. I've said before that the injury that he has is more or less one that you see baseball players get. Anything with the elbow being thrown out of whack, or the bone and that joint right there in the elbow is really either actually damaged structurally, or it's just completely ruptured, or something of that nature. Usually baseball players get those type of injuries, predominantly pitchers from what I've known, more so than anything, just because they're throwing the ball at such a high velocity, like every minute seem like, and basically all throughout a baseball game and even on their practices. So it's like when you're throwing a ball 90 miles an hour, your shoulder, that elbow, the torque and all that, plays a big factor when you're doing something with that high velocity. And usually it requires them to have Tommy John surgery, which is the elbow, and an elbow that connects all the way back up to the upper part of the arm. You see, it really it affects the bending, the movement, and the mobility of the arm to the point where you can't play at a high level, which is the reason why a lot of baseball players never really come back the same after that Tommy John surgery. It's just the way it is. So this situation that Paul George in is even more rare than even Kawhi Leonard's, because Kawhi Leonard has a partial ACL tear, which, a lot of players have been through ACLs. You've heard that throughout your probably life of watching sports. I feel like more people who are not a doctor knows about an ACL than a UCL. A UCL is just so unheard of, so rare and not talked about. It's like almost an uncommon injury. So it's very, very hard to determine Paul George's issue and how they need to evaluate it, because now they're trying to basically say, oh, we'll give him a few more weeks so he can rest the arm and see how it is so it can naturally heal. But naturally healing could take a lot longer than a few more weeks. It could take longer than what they expect. So if it takes longer than a few more weeks, he's going to have to get the surgery. It's no other way around it. And really at this point, if you look at it from the standpoint of what the injury is, the fact that they had to rest him a few more weeks, even though he was scheduled to come back a little bit earlier at one point, it definitely tells you that the injury is more severe than what they even thought it was, and maybe even what Paul George thought it was as well. But of course, to try to salvage their season, they're trying to actually just let him sit out a couple more weeks, just to see if he's able to give it a go and see if it heals good enough for him to want to give it a go. So that's definitely, a huge thing there, but we have to see how it plays out. And as far as, the main guy, Kawhi Leonard, we know he has a partial ACL tear. We've been hearing a lot of good things about, him, his rehabilitation, how he's far ahead on it, doing jumps, box jumps, moving around, shooting shots, taking a little bit of, very little bit of contact, not much at all, but moving around very well, mobile. And, as much as we see him out at Rams games and, and doing a lot of things on his own leisure time, it makes you think, makes you wonder, man. Kawhi Leonard said in media day he really doesn't feel injured. And then honestly, looking at him moving around the way he does, he doesn't really look injured. He looks mobile. He looks good enough to play. But of course, that's not the case. It's a process, as always. And you have to go through the whole process just just to make sure everything is healed the way it's supposed to before you step back out on the floor. And really, if you look at the situation with Kawhi Leonard, I mean, his injury history shows that he doesn't want to come back unless he's 100%. His injury history shows in other situations he's been in, he'd rather be 100% of who he is rather than 80 or 90%. Now, I think in this situation with the Clippers, because he wants to win for his hometown so bad, and he wants a championship on the Clippers building so bad, he's probably willing to come back at 90-95% just to help the team. And I think that's the notion that was going into this year. He really wants to help. He really wants to come back, and he really wants to make an impact on this team in other ways that he might not have done on his previous teams. You know, because I feel like he has a more of a care for this team rather than he did for the Spurs or maybe the Toronto Raptors. And I think he cared about both of those teams as well, the players and everything on it. But just being back at home in LA, you definitely want to win a championship for your hometown that you grew up in, because it just makes you feel like a complete player, like you've accomplished everything in your basketball life if you're able to do that. So I definitely understand where he's coming from with that. But now, when you think about the situation in its entirety, as I said before, is it ideal to think that the Clippers can shut both of them down for the rest of the season? It very much is, very much so, because when you look at their injury history and what they've had up until this point, you have to be precautious with players who's had multiple injuries before, especially near the knees, the ankles, or any injury that harms them from playing at a high level. And that's exactly what the Clippers are trying to do. They're trying to be precautious, but they're also trying to win at the same time. So it's like the balance of that is very, very difficult. You don't want to push too much and say, hey, Kawhi, we need you to come back. We need you to be the guy you was last year in the playoffs, shooting over 60 plus percent and scoring over 30 plus points a game, shooting very efficient and playing high level defense when called upon. So we need that Kawhi Leonard, and that's exactly what the Clippers would like to have, but they don't want to rush him back because they don't want to re-aggravate his injury anymore or add any more injury to insult by him being out any longer period of time, because he did sign that max contract and they do need to win now. The notion is to win a championship now. It's almost like now or never. So it's very, very hard to balance trying to be precautious and care about a player and care about winning at the same time. And that's where the Clippers are in regards to Kawhi and PG, of course, because like I said, those two players basically not only make up for what the team, lacks, but they definitely can make up for, whatever they do on both ends of the floor. And that's exactly something that the Clippers are understanding that they know, but they also understand that they can't push these players because they want those players there for the long term. This is not a short term thing that they're looking at. So they have to be precautious, but at the same time, they don't want to disappoint themselves, the organization, and the fans either. And to punt this season away and say, hey, we'll try next year and bring them back, that will kill Clipper Nation. It really will. It'll kill the spirit. It'll kill the vibe. It'll kill everything. Now, of course, when the season starts back up next year, if that was the case, of course, Clipper Nation, everybody will be ready to go and be excited. But I mean, another lost season definitely hurts, any teams or any team's fan base, because you're right there. You have an opportunity to win. And honestly, if you look at this season, once again, it's wide open. The Warriors are a good team, but Stephen Curry struggles a lot. Even though he's a great shooter, he still struggles a lot. Last night, he goes 1 for 13 from 3. And a lot of people might say because Klay Thompson wasn't there, I really don't give a damn. Stephen Curry struggles a lot. He's never won a Finals MVP, and he hasn't played the best on the biggest stage, which is the NBA Finals, in which he's played in a lot of NBA Finals, and he still hasn't won a Finals MVP. I mean, my goodness. Andre Iguodala won the Finals MVP over him. That says a lot right there. And then on top of that, Klay Thompson still could be dealing with, trying to get his footing under him, things like that. Maybe he'll have his rhythm by then. And I mean, maybe he won't. Who knows? Maybe he's not the player he once was. And, a lot plays into that. But I still think the Clippers are not scared of them either way. I still think the Clippers have a better team either way, because they have the best player. The best player on the floor in that series would be Kawhi Leonard, no doubt about it, if he's healthy. And the Suns, they're not scaring anybody, because like I said, the Clippers won 6 games with them last year without Kawhi Leonard. So they definitely feel like they can mentally beat them. And the Lakers are a mess right now. So, really, the West is wide open for them. It really is. So. And there's other teams in the West that really are playing pretty decent. Like, you got the Grizzlies and teams like that, but none of those teams, they don't, the Clippers don't fear them if they're healthy. So my thing is this, it would be a very real tragic if Kawhi and PG did get shut down for the season. But at the same time, like I said, it's very possible, because if PG doesn't come back in a few weeks, Kawhi might start thinking, what's the point of risking him going out there, injuring his ACL even more, or putting more wear and tear on his body? And they probably don't have a chance to win, even though I feel like they would have a really good chance if they had Kawhi Leonard out there. I think Kawhi Leonard is one of those type players who operates very, very well on his own. I feel like Kawhi Leonard operates better by himself, honestly, than with help. I feel like if you put Kawhi Leonard on a team with a bunch of role players, he excels just as good or better than he would with a budding superstar. I just feel that way about Kawhi Leonard, because I've always pretty much seen him predominantly do that. Because when he was coming up in San Antonio, Tim Duncan and Ginobili were out of their prime. And so was Tony Parker. Tony Parker still had a little bit left, but it wasn't much. That's why they pretty much gave the team to Kawhi Leonard in no time, because Kawhi was the guy, and Popovich saw that. So predominantly, he played with 3-star players, but they were out of their prime, so they were more or less going on the cusp of becoming role players rather than superstar players like they were. Even still, he still showed that he can carry a team by going to Toronto with a bunch of role players and winning. So he's proven what he can do in either situation. So I still think they would have a pretty decent chance if Kawhi came back without PG, but almost to a degree it wouldn't make any sense, because Kawhi is just risking hurting himself even more by putting the onus on himself. If PG doesn't play and they go to the playoffs with Kawhi Leonard, Kawhi is definitely going to have to score 30 plus points a game. No doubt about it, for them to win. He might score 35 points a game for them to win, in the playoffs. Just because he doesn't have that extra help, and he's used to having that extra help now. So it's like life without that extra help would definitely hurt. But at the same time, I think Kawhi is good enough to do it. That's just my personal opinion. That could be the fact of him being my favorite player. But I definitely seen this guy carry a team just like we all have in Toronto. And I definitely think he can do it again if he really, really, put his mind to it. And he was healthy enough to do it. But honestly, having Paul George is a luxury for him, because it allows him to lay back sometime and don't have to go out there and score 1,000 points for his team to win when Paul George is playing the way he's supposed to. And I don't know if it would make much sense for him to come back, or the Clippers would think it make much sense for him to come back without his budding superstar in Paul George, where they can go out there and definitely, go win this thing. And I definitely hope that's not the case, but it's definitely not, crazy to think that both of them might be shut down for the rest of the season. But it's definitely not something that Clipper Nation hopes for, and it's definitely not something that the NBA world wants to see, because everybody wants to see everybody healthy, because that's the only way you really can tell which teams are really the best and who's the better team, who's on top, who's not, when everybody's healthy, not when a team is depleted and one team has got all their players. It just doesn't look right that way. So we definitely hope that Kawhi and PG find a way on the court this season. We definitely hope that Paul George's UCL is not that bad, and he comes back from it and he recovers with the rest and stuff that he's getting, and hopefully heals naturally where he's able to be effective. We definitely hope that Kawhi Leonard is definitely staying on top of his ACL, because that's something that, a lot of players have suffered a lot of, demons from, in regards to coming back and never being the same player they were, or, not having the confidence they used to have before they, tweaked that knee to a point where it's like, oh, I don't want to do this same move no more, because that's what got me hurt last time, so you definitely hope that Kawhi Leonard comes back with the same mentality, same everything that he's had before, and the same, mentality in regards to winning and going out there playing at a high level like we know he can, because he's definitely good enough to do it, and he's proven it, multiple times, and I definitely believe he'll prove it again and win another championship. So we definitely hope that happens. But it's definitely not out of the realm, as I said, to think that both of them might be possibly shut down this season, which would not be good. But at the same time, Organizations have to make the better decision for the long haul. They can't always make decisions for the short term, because short term is good, but sometimes, the short term can get you hurt in the long run, because if they re-aggravate an injury, now they might not be the same player. And then now you're talking about trading players, stuff like that. Things like that have happened. We've seen it before. Matter of fact, we've seen it with Derrick Rose. He's one of the premier people I can think of in my mind. Injuries start creeping in more because they pushed him to come back sooner, and he wanted to come back sooner for the city and everything like that. And it really hurt his career for the long run, because now he is back to the point where he's relevant and he is a good player in the NBA, but we'll never see the player that he was ever again, which hurts a lot of fans, because he was definitely one of those players that people just admired at one point in time. But, the good thing for us, we do have Ja Morant, which he's definitely like a 2.0 version of Derrick Rose, but that's a carbon copy. That's not the original. And I say, as good as Ja Morant will get, he probably won't ever be as good as Derrick Rose, but that's another story for another day. But my thing is, you definitely want Kawhi and PG not to go through things like that. So if it's ideal, of course, have both of them come back if they could be healthy enough to do so. If it's not, of course, they got to make the best decision for the long haul, because they do got them signed up for a few years. So, hey, I'm saying, you want to get the max out of those players rather than the minimum. But hopefully everything works out in the Clippers' favor, where both of them are able to come back and they're able to make a run at the championship, because the West is wide open. And I definitely hope that the Clippers are definitely in that mix, because they definitely deserve to be, and they definitely need to be looked at as a contender, especially when their two big guns come back. And I definitely think they're one of the best teams in the West if both of their big guns are healthy. But hey, that's my take on the situation. You leave any comments in the comment section. As always, let me know what you think. And hey, Cali out.